course, is Yasmin Catley, the Deputy Leader of the Labor Party, who has been also heavily involved in our advocacy for the crew on board the Ruby Princess. And Yasmin, of course, like Dean, who I'm going to introduce shortly, has been in touch regularly with the crew. Dean, of course, is the National Coordinator with the Transport Workers Federation, and Dean is legally responsible for the welfare of that crew. That is Dean's role, and he has been regularly in touch with the crew and can provide an update today. I want to start, however, by welcoming the Special Commission of Inquiry announced today by the Premier. I have said for the last 9 days that it is important, it is an imperative that we have a Special Commission of Inquiry to get to the bottom of what happened on the Ruby Princess. We have 18 people who have died. We have 650 people plus who've been infected with COVID-19 as a result of what happened on that vessel. A police inquiry was never going to get to the bottom of what happened. We supported all the way through this a criminal investigation if there was a crime that was committed. But when you're talking about an inquiry that gets to the bottom of what happened, including decision making involving different agencies and different levels of government, a police inquiry was never going to get to that and never going to be transparent and ensure that every stone would be unturned. So I want to just say that we welcome that inquiry. I think it's been far too late in coming, but I did say that when the Premier announced a Special Commission of Inquiry, we would welcome that and offer our full support. We look forward to seeing the terms of reference in the next couple of days, but appointing Brett Walker, SC, to the position of Commissioner is a fine decision, a good decision, and as I said, we welcome this. It's just been far too late in coming. Now, while we are welcoming the inquiry into the Ruby Princess disaster, we do not want that to distract from what is a humanitarian crisis on board the Ruby Princess. Now, we found out this morning from the Police Commissioner that they are planning to send that ship on its way on Sunday. We know that there are 139 crew who've been diagnosed with COVID-19. Now, tell me how we can possibly, as a state, allow that vessel to leave with unwell people on board. That is not appropriate. It is not appropriate in any way that we allow that vessel to leave our shores while there are unwell people on board. And I can tell you in conversations I've had with the crew that they are scared, they are anxious, and they are not being communicated with at all in regard to the decisions that appear to be made on their behalf. Can I say before handing over to Yasmin and to Dean that this morning we heard the Police Commissioner clearly admit that there is a lack of information coming between Carnival, between Aspen Medical, between Border Force and between New South Wales Police. No one is looking after the welfare of this crew. There is no one thinking about these 1,000 crew members on board that vessel who are facing a very uncertain future. It has been our position and remains our position that all crew members on board the Ruby Princess should be tested. They should be tested, they should be cleared, and they should be allowed to go home to their families if that is what they want. We know that there have been people who have been in quarantine in their cabins for up to since the 20th of March. That means there have been people locked in cabins since the 20th of March, and some of them have not been tested. How is that appropriate? Who is looking after these people? Why is the Police Commissioner saying that he's getting information from social media on the welfare of that crew when it is actually up to New South Wales Health, Aspen Medical, Carnival and New South Wales Police? So I would actually like to know who is in charge here, and I'd like to know why the welfare of the crew is not paramount. And I would say to the Premier and to the Health Minister that if you are going to send that ship offshore, if you are going to send that ship on its way on Sunday, you better be damn sure that every single person is able to travel. Because if one person dies on that vessel, then that is on your conscience. And right now, I do not believe you can give that guarantee. So I'm going to hand over to Dean and then to Yasmin, and then happy to take questions.
Thank you, Jodi. I'm unhappy to report that the situation on board the Ruby Princess, a flag of convenience cruise ship, is a complete shambles. It's a shambles because those that should be responsible aren't taking any responsibility. We know that the Department of Border Force has handballed it, has outsourced it to Aspen Medical, who in a press release a few days ago refused to take any responsibility for the medical care of those 1,100 workers on board. It should be for the Department of Health in New South Wales, but we know in direct communications with the Health Minister that they don't have any provision for medical care for those 1,100 workers from 50 different nations on board of that ship. So who does it fall to? It falls to two GPs on that ship and overseen by the flag of convenience, and that is Bahamas in this instance, and the home port for Mick Fuller's interest. The home port for this ship is a shady lawyer's office in Bermuda set up to help dodge tax. I find myself in a very unusual situation today in joining with the company, standing alongside Carnival Cruises, demanding that we take away all the political impost away from these young men and women, 1,100 of them, returning home to their families in 50 different countries around the world. Enough politics, enough handballing back and forth, enough hiding this ship in Port Kembla away from the prying eyes of the press and the public. We want a humanitarian response to this problem. We don't want, and we will reject, a military response or a police response. Find someone who's in charge and fix this problem. Now, we took away from Mick Fuller's press conference this morning an invitation that says anybody on that ship who wants to go home will be facilitated through the airports in Sydney. And so we absolutely applaud that and accept that invitation. We accept that alongside Carnival, because I know it's been Carnival's position for the last 3 weeks to have people repatriated that aren't key to that ship. Now, for Mick Fuller's information also, there are only 25 people needed to crew that ship in a safe operational manner. We can take 25 away from 1,100 and look after the rest of those people. Those people that want to stay on board, that Mick Fuller is completely and continuously referring to, are very happy to. But what we want is a transparent and honest invitation and capacity for anybody on that ship to come off and be repatriated with no repercussions and no comment on their employer. It's simply a humanitarian evacuation and repatriation. Those people that are sick must be identified by testing everybody. That is a no-brainer. And we've been calling on that for 3 long weeks and been rejected. Finally, we know there are 250 people on board that ship who have been tested and more than half have returned positive. So that's a problem. Let's identify who needs medical treatment and give them medical treatment and isolation ashore. Those people that need to be repatriated and want to be repatriated need to be isolated ashore with all the due process, and when cleared for repatriation, through chartered flights, sent back to their families and their loved ones who continue to call the ITF from around the world asking for support for their sons and daughters. And finally, we just want to sit around the table and work through all the logistics, recognising that the International Transport Workers Federation will always take up our responsibilities to represent these workers, even when state and federal governments refuse to acknowledge us, even when contractors like Aspen Medical refuse to acknowledge us, and Mick Fuller from the police department refuses to talk to us. Thank you very much, Jodi, and thanks to the Labor Party in Western Australia and federally for standing up to these people. Unfortunately, it has become a political problem in something that needs a humanitarian viewpoint. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dean. The treatment of these crew by the Berejiklian government is an international disgrace. These crew are being treated as criminals when all they want is the medical assistance that they need. Gladys Berejiklian is putting the lives of 1,200 crew at risk by even the notion of thinking that that ship can leave Port Kembla. I've spoken to crew on board the vessel and they are extremely concerned. They haven't been asked if they want to leave the vessel, which has been indicated. They have no idea what their immediate future is. Yesterday, I spoke to a woman on board who celebrated her 30th birthday inside her cabin. She is so fearful for her future. I'm from a seafaring family. Can I say that could be my father, my husband, or indeed my daughter on that vessel? These are good, hard-working people, and the Berejiklian government are treating them like criminals. Something else that I'd like the Berejiklian government to know is that Australia is a signatory to the Maritime Labour Convention. And can I say, it says, each member shall ensure that seafarers on board ships in its territory who are in need of immediate medical care are given access to the members' medical facilities on shore. We have a commitment, an international commitment to these people, and I ask this government to please make sure that they adhere to that commitment. It is clear that they don't know their commitment, and if that ship leaves on Sunday, then anybody who falls ill or anybody who passes away will be on their hands.
I haven't had direct contact with the Commodore of the ship, but you're right, it's remarkable that 3 weeks into this isolation process, or 2 weeks in the isolation process, people are still being exposed to the virus, and the captain himself, the Commodore himself, was aghast when he realised that he was being exposed even as recently as 2 days ago. It's called a minimum safe manning of around 25 crew, operational crew.
One of them would need to be a captain.
They need a captain.
How would you feel about the notion that Mick Fuller said this morning of flying in a captain to get on a doomed ship like that?
Well, it would be a brave volunteer, wouldn't it? But also, if a captain is exposed and goes ashore on the strength of being exposed and leaves the rest of his crew on board, that's a pretty bad captain. That's a captain getting off a sinking ship. And so if it's good enough for the captain, it's good enough for the deck boy.
Logistically, how does this work on Sunday? Does the ship actually sail back to Bermuda? And how long does that take? And what are the potential pitfalls on that journey for the people who are on board?
This is something our government struggles to understand, is that these are these are flags of convenience. Bermuda wouldn't know what to do with the ship. A good example is the latest flag of convenience, Mongolia. You can't get a ship in there, there's no coast. So Bermuda don't want this ship, and those ships are never going to go back to their flag state. Panama, well, I've asked Carnival where it's going. I only care about the crew that are on board and making sure everyone gets access to some dignity and respect. So I believe that Mick Fuller said it's going into US waters. They're going to have some problems in US waters as well. The crew are frantic. The only information they're getting is what's piped through on their audio at night time, and we've heard some of that through the press. And that is, everything's fine, that's good, we may be sailing, we may not be sailing. They deserve real information, solid information. The only time that they hear that everyone's going to be tested is through the media and through us. The only time they hear their ship is sailing is through Mick Fuller's press statements. It doesn't come from internal, it doesn't come from inside. So all of the crew are being treated like mushrooms in this instance. They don't want to. Who wants to go to the States these days? I mean, it's the epicenter of the virus in the world. Plus, the Trump administration turned their back on the flag of convenience cruise ship industry when dealing out the multi-trillion-dollar packages. They said these ships aren't American, aren't US, and they're not getting any consideration. So when it comes time to returning these ships to Bermuda or to Florida or Miami, I'd suggest they're going to have some problems. But it's a long time between Port Kembla and off the coast of Florida. Let's fix the problem here and not push them out to sea in unknown waters.
What actually did that happen?
So far, we've been pleading with authorities to test everybody. It wasn't until it reached fever pitch recently when we knew that there were 88 people that had respiratory problems. When they tested those, more than 50% came back. We pushed and pushed and pushed for more people to be tested. In fact, 100%. just like the Diamond Princess was tested alongside in Yokohama by the same company, Aspen Medical. And those people were repatriated because the Japanese government took a stand and told Carnival and told the authorities, show some dignity and respect and a humanitarian response to this issue.
What happens if the ship is in the middle of the Pacific halfway between here and the States and crew members do suffer a downturn? Are lives at risk?
Lives at risk, they start stacking up the bodies in the freezers. They can't get medical evacuation that far at sea. Helicopters only reach a few kilometres out to sea and they're not coming in. So if you're in the middle of the Pacific and people start getting chronic illness, I don't know that there's any respirators. There's 2 GPs on that ship for 1,100 people. 2 GPs, general purpose GPs, and about 5 nurses. So what sort of a problem are they going to face at sea? Aspen's not there. The federal government won't care because they're in international waters and it won't be their problem. And the Berejiklian government will be turning their back saying nothing to see here.
Jodi, can I just ask you, just in regards to the inquiry, the Premier said he could not ask Mr Walker to hold public hearings. Would you like to see public hearings?
Look, I would like to see public hearings, but ultimately I have said that I would support the way that this inquiry will operate. To be honest, I'm just incredibly thankful that she's finally realised that we need to get to the bottom of what happened. You know, this has been a cover-up by her over the last 9 days. She has wormed her way through every possible excuse and every possible reason, and today she's done the right thing. Now, as I said, I will get behind this, I will support her, I will praise her, I will offer our bipartisan constructive support for this going forwards.
Do you want it to be public?
I think it's important that it is public. Yes, I think it's important that there is evidence given. However, I will also say that I trust Brett Walker SC. He's incredibly well qualified to conduct this, and I give my full support to the way that he wants to conduct this. Well, yeah, look, can I say in regard to that we have parents who are facing, they've got a very uncertain future with their children at home. I do think that there needs to be a clear direction from the Premier and the Education Minister as to what is going to happen when school returns. Now, every time the Premier is asked, she can't provide a straight answer. I understand, of course, that there are still discussions going on, but I think parents at home who are facing such a difficult time and in many cases not coping with their children being at home, let alone educating them, I think that they deserve to know what's going to happen. They deserve some clarity here. I think the Prime Minister has created more uncertainty for parents. So, we will back the health advice, of course, but we will back parents importantly and say that they just need clarity right now and they need to be told what is going to happen. Oh, look, I'm just devastated. I mean, this is a shocking situation. It appears that every time there's an issue, the Premier calls on the police. This is a terrible, terrible situation, and I really feel for the staff member involved. There are 2 things I want to say, is that aged care workers have priority for testing, just like nurses, just like healthcare workers. But that message needs to get through to the aged care facilities that exist in New South Wales. They have priority. Let them know they have priority for testing. I also would say I don't understand when the Premier walks in for her presser every morning that she gets her temperature checked and she gets her little badge to say that she's okay. If it's okay for the Premier to have her temperature checked, why is it not okay for those who are working within our health system and in particular our aged care facilities? If the Premier has her temperature checked and gets her little badge that says she's okay, then so should aged care workers. Yes, the government should be providing thermometers, it should be giving direction, and it should be supporting our aged care workers. Can I say that these aged care workers are some of the lowest paid workers in this state? They have insecure employment. Many are casuals. Many don't get leave. We should be supporting them, not shaming them. We should make sure that they know what is available to them working in that industry. Thanks, everyone.